Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and yesterday I did a video kind of laughing about Cali muscle, saying that squats and deadlifts destroy your body, right? Made that statement. And I kind of laughed at it, and I discussed it quite a bit, and I discussed longevity and heavy lifting and all this stuff. And invariably, what always happens when you bring this topic up, the bodybuilding fans chime in. Bodybuilding fans chime in. Always an interesting group of people. And they're like, well, at least one of them this morning was like, well, you know, Ronnie Coleman is in a wheelchair. So, heavy lifting did that. And kind of the implication is that heavy lifting is not safe because of Ronnie Coleman. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. All right, guys. So this is oftentimes the level of logic bodybuilders use and bodybuilding fans. I'm going to be polite here. I'm not going to make fun of any group of people's intelligence. But you guys hopefully can see the flaws in this logic already, because Ronnie Coleman, who was a many-time winning Mr. Bodybuilder, absolutely massive bodybuilder, who was very, very strong, because he is in a wheelchair and has all this damage to his back and nerve damage to his back and disc damage to his back. Because he has all of this and he lifted really heavy, therefore heavy lifting is dangerous for everybody else besides Ronnie Coleman. Now, hopefully some people can see some problems with this, and if they don't, I'll break it down for you. Let's go ahead and just break it down a little bit. All right, first of all, Ronnie Coleman, relative to his frame, used weights that the vast majority of the top 1% of powerlifters would not be using. In other words, Ronnie Coleman was about 5'7". I've met him in person. I don't know what height he's listed as. Don't know, don't care. I've met him in person. I'd say the guy's about 5'7". Even if you want to say he's a little taller, 5'8". All right, guys, 5'8" guys who squat 800 pounds, deadlift 800 pounds, bench press over 500. That's almost unheard of, even in competitive powerlifting. So we need to let that sink in for a moment. All right, there's some other factors going on here. We'll get into training style in a minute too. A lot of what he did was reckless, and I think the way he trained could hurt you with lighter weights. At least carry the risk of it. But let's just look at, objectively speaking, frame size versus weights moved. We all know, hopefully we all understand there's a reason there's weight classes in strength sports. Usually it's height related. The taller guys tend to go into the higher weight classes, and the shorter guys tend to dominate the lighter weight classes. Shorter guys are going to be pound for pound stronger than taller guys almost every single time. And there's physics involved with that. Pound for pound strength are going to be better, but absolute strength, the taller guys are going to be better. People need to understand that the number of guys under 6 foot who have ever even dreamed of an 800-pound deadlift, pretty rare. A lot of these guys who you think of as these really strong lifters, you need to realize they have massive frames. They have massive frames. Even though, yeah, a lot of them are abusing gear, not to the level necessarily that Ronnie Coleman did. They have massive frames. Now you go look at the Russian Sergey with that 700-something pound bench press. You guys think he's 5'10"? Dude is well over 6 foot. All right, you go look a lot of your heavier weight lifters, they're well over 6 foot tall. They have a bigger, thicker frame and structure. Most guys who are down around 5'7", 5'8", tend to compete in powerlifting in like the 198. You'll see guys in the 220. You'll see guys in the 220. But they're usually going to be more competitive in the 220, 198, in some cases as low as the 181. They're not going to be walking around at 300 pounds because they're usually, their frame can't hold enough muscle without using enormous, mind-blowing amounts of gear to be competitive because of that. So that being said, people need to understand there's a frame issue here. It's almost unheard of, even in strength sports, for people at his height with his frame size to be as strong as he was, because most guys who compete in strength sports are not going to use as many drugs as Ronnie was willing to use as a competing for the Mr. Olympia. You guys need to understand, Not all people who use anabolics use the same amounts. There's massive diversity in the drug protocols, the amounts people use out there. All right, your Mr. Olympia competitors are usually using amounts of drugs that the average user of stuff, including the average strength athlete, would blow their mind. They'd be like, hell no. If they could even afford it. You know, a lot of guys aren't willing to spend $30,000 a year on drugs. So you have to factor that in. His muscle mass to frame size was extreme by powerlifting standards, strongman standards, even by bodybuilding standards. So the amount of strength he was capable of generating relative to his bone structure size was pretty much unheard of. Right? Pretty much unheard of because of genetics and enormous mind-boggling amounts of drug abuse. The average person with his frame size is probably never going to lift half of what he lifted. Okay, they'll lift half of what he lifted. You know, squatting 400 for reps I don't think is unusual for 5'8" guys. Most of them are going to be squatting 700, 800. They're not going to be benching 500 pounds. In fact, a 400-pound bench is relatively rare in guys his height. Factor that in for a moment. We're talking about the lifting heavy. Okay, the drugs played a role. There's no way he would have been moving anywhere near the weights that he moved had he not had enormous amounts of muscle mass from the drug abuse. In other words, his frame would never have been subjected to the sort of trauma he subjected it to for someone who is just a recreational power lifter or someone who just trained to be strong, right? That doesn't mean the squat and the deadlift are dangerous. Furthermore, look at his training style. Look how sloppy and shitty his technique was on so many exercises. All right, the guy stood around doing cheat rows with like 580 pounds. Cheat rows with 580 pounds. You don't think that takes a toll? The way he jerked and pulled just in the air, wouldn't let it touch the ground, doing T-bar rows and barbell rows, just hanging it in the air and jerking and flopping. You don't think that puts stress on your back? And that has nothing to do with heavy lifting. That's just using, at a certain point, piss poor form to row 600 pounds instead of 400. Let's be realistic here. That's a factor. Watch all his rowing videos. Then you watch the deadlifts. You guys watch what's that big famous deadlift that he did that is so famous, like 810 pounds for a double, right? Everyone's seen it. He did touch and go. What is it that I tell you guys over and over and over? One of the quickest ways to make the deadlift into a dangerous exercise is to do touch and go reps. I don't care what champion you've seen who does it. They're eventually possibly going to get hurt doing it. It's bad technique that leads to injuries. So you got a guy who's doing touch and go deadlifts, which is a dangerous way to deadlift. It causes, in my opinion, additional herniation of the disc for no benefit. Doing touch and go with 800 pounds. Is it the fact that he's deadlifting heavy that's the problem, or is it the fact that he's doing touch and go reps with 700 and 800 pounds? When touch and go reps themselves are dangerous, you know, and he's doing this on a frame that's 5'8". So when you understand it from that perspective, the whole logic, because Ronnie Coleman is hurt and he lifted heavy, therefore lifting heavy is inherently dangerous, is not particularly logical. It's not particularly logical. It's not just the fact that he lifted heavy. It's the fact that he lifted heavy, used mind-boggling amounts of drugs, which would, again, give him enough muscle mass that he would lift weights that no person out there in any normal situation would ever come close to lifting with his frame size. Therefore, you know, the risk of back injury and everything, because that's your bones that are injured and your connective tissue and everything else. And the fact that he used really piss poor form on a lot of these exercises. That's your combination, guys. That's what put him in a wheelchair. It's not the fact that he lifted heavy. That's not the reason in isolation here. So again, that's bodybuilder logic for you. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.